You're almost speechless when you see this little girl collapsed at the feet of the Pope, weeping, and you wonder, what is she saying to him? What is she pleading to him for? Earlier, we should point out, the Pope tweeted, refugees are not numbers, they're people who have faces, names, stories, and need to be treated as such. And we see him doing that there today in that refugee camp.
Much more ahead on your new day. We're just getting started this hour, and we're going to turn to politics in a moment and the tone of this race between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Well, you saw it heat up on Thursday night here on CNN during that debate. Well, there are new attacks making headlines this morning. We'll have those for you.
Also, the GOP, big fight for delegates out west in Wyoming. Trump launching fresh attacks against the Republican Party. We'll get reaction for you.
Also, this disturbing story out of Maryland. A firefighter responding to a home to help a person. That person then turns a gun on the firefighter, kills that person. Others were shot as well. Was this an ambush? California, attending several fundraisers. Both candidates, they're not playing nice anymore, attacking one another on taxes, speeches, much more. Let's bring in now Philip Levine, a mayor of Miami Beach and Hillary Clinton supporter, and Jonathan Ticini, political strategist and author of The Essential Bernie Sanders and His Vision for America, obviously a Bernie Sanders supporter. Good to have both of you this morning.
Good morning, Victor.
So I want to start with the big headline, and I'm going to start with you on this, Philip. Bernie Sanders, in 2014, he and his wife Jane pulled in about $206,000. You see the numbers, the breakdown there. Compare that to Hillary Clinton and former President Clinton's income in 2014. $28,336,212. That disparity, does that compromise her message of fighting for the middle class, for those who need that help? This disparity of 100 to 1 as it relates to income.
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that I think Secretary Clinton and President Clinton were so transparent in releasing their tax records is off the start is the right thing to do. Listen, Secretary Clinton's husband was the most popular two-term president of the United States of America. And all former presidents that we know go on to speaking tours, and they do very, very well. But of course, I think what's most important, the fact that you can't get the tax returns from previous years from Senator Sanders. I think during the debate, what he said is his wife's very busy, he couldn't get to it. I would just like to tell Senator Sanders, a guy who's a financial wizard that wants to break up the banks, there's an organization out there called H&R Block. And what they'll do, of course, is they'll actually get your previous tax returns. They'll help you do that. They'll bring it to what's called a copy machine. They'll make copies for you. And of course, you can bring them out to everybody.
Let me give it to Jonathan now. And if there is no big, bold headline out of these tax returns, why did he wait so long after months and months of calls to release them?
And the mayor, of course, did not answer your question, Victor. And he read from the talking points the Clinton campaign has distributed. Look, the Clinton campaign throughout this campaign has tried to avoid the real issues. They want to throw out things that are really irrelevant. They don't want to talk about Hillary Clinton's vote for the Iraq War. They don't want to talk about the fact that she's received $225,000 from Goldman Sachs, that she's awash in corporate money, that she receives money from oil and gas interests that are completely contrary to the idea of combating climate change. The truth is that, to your point about their wealth, they are part not just of the 1%, they are the part of the 1/10 of 1%. And I think your lead into this piece basically exemplified the entire debate. Bernie Sanders goes to the Vatican to talk about the crisis in the world, to talk about the economic crisis facing all people, the crisis that partly the Clintons brought on by bad trade agreements in this country. On the other hand, Hillary Clinton travels out west to California to hobnob with the 1%, the very people who have been involved in this crisis.
Jonathan, let me jump in here, because you started your answer by saying that Mayor Levine didn't answer my question. You didn't answer my question either. Why did it take him so long to release the tax returns, a single year, if this is what he was going to release?
Jonathan, you're his biographer. You should know these answers.
Hold on. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, first of all, let's be clear. Not biographer, collection of his wonderful speeches over the last 30 years, which shows that this is a man of principle who hasn't changed his positions based on polls at all. But to your point, look, nobody doubted that Bernie Sanders was a man of modest means. This is why this was a phony issue. Like many Americans, frankly, I actually had to ask for an extension of my taxes because I haven't had time. I've been traveling following Bernie. He's a presidential candidate. They simply didn't have time. You want to hold him accountable for that? Fine.
Didn't have
Based on our
time.
block, it's a great organization. I
Jonathan,
don't want to
Tassini,
promote
Philip
them, but-
Levine, I have to wrap this, unfortunately, a little bit early. I understand we have a bit of breaking news. Thank you both. We'll continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Victor.
Right.
Yeah, we are getting some breaking news, Victor. The Pope, we understand, as we have seen him in the refugee camp in Greece today, just got on his plane with 14 refugees that he is taking back to Rome with him. We're going to have more for you in just a moment. Again, the Pope just was with refugees this morning. We saw video of that child who collapsed at his feet in tears. Obviously, he walked through this refugee camp. People are pleading with him. 14 people now next to the Pope's side on his plane and heading back to Rome with him from Greece. We're back in a moment with more.
Hello, good afternoon. Pope Francis has been given an emotional welcome as he met migrants on the Greek island of Lesbos. He told refugees they are not alone as he visited a camp to see for himself the scale of the migrant crisis. He called on the world to show common humanity as some of those he met broke down in tears and begged for his help. The Pope attended a memorial to victims of migration and recited a short prayer. After a minute of silence, he was joined by other religious leaders to throw laurel wreaths into the water to commemorate those who had died at sea. Well, the Pontiff is now preparing to leave the island after his 5-hour visit to fly back to Rome. Well, let's take you to Lesbos now. Our Middle East correspondent Alex Rossi is there for us. So, Alex, what was the key message that the Pope had for the migrants and refugees that he met in Lesbos?
It was a message, but it was also an appeal for us to search, I suppose, for that common humanity, that bond that should exist between all men and women. The emphasis really on his message was that these people, these migrants, these refugees, they are just like you, they're just like me. They are our sons, our daughters, our mothers and our fathers. And really, if you look at it that way, we should find sanctuary for these people. Now, the Vatican insists that the visit here was religious and humanitarian in its nature, but many people watching those pictures will see it as being overtly political too, shaming the European Union and its policy of detention and deportation. Pope Francis clearly signalling to Europe's leaders that they need to be more compassionate in the way that they treat people seeking sanctuaries on these shores, looking really to Europe for safety. That seemed to be the common message. Now, the big question underlying all of this is, will it make any difference? Will it change Europe's policy? Now, the countervailing argument to that, of course, is that Europe and its leaders, remember the countries within Europe are democratic, the electorates are placing enormous pressure on those leaders to solve the migrant crisis. We have seen a rise of the right, a rise in nationalism as well. We heard from President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, talking about how the migrant crisis has pulled apart at the fabric of Europe. And it's quite possible, and one doesn't want to over-dramatize it, that if the wholesale immigration that we have seen over the last 12 months or so, more than 1 million migrants flooding into the European Union continued, it could break down the whole project of the European Union. And I suppose that the counter-argument remains then that actually you've got to do something about that, because that could be worse than letting more people in. And that certainly seems to be the position of the European Union at the moment. So the Pope comes here with this message, but it is unlikely really to change the position of Europe and its leaders on this issue.
And Alex, what are you hearing about this suggestion that the Pope might want to take some migrants back with him to Italy?
Well, we know that there are a couple of migrant families already, refugees, living in the Vatican at the moment. We have heard it reported on Greek state media that 10 people will be taken back with the Pope. But the Vatican has refused to confirm that. Now, lots of people will be asking, how can the Pope do that? Europe has shut its borders. Well, Vatican is the smallest country in the world. It controls its own borders and its own diplomacy. So it could do that. But if that does happen again, it will be moving very much from the humanitarian and the religious to an overt political statement. So we've had no confirmation from the Vatican at the moment, but that's certainly being reported on state Greek media.
OK, Alex, thank you. Well, we will keep a close eye on that red carpet leading up to that plane, just in case we get see any pictures of him with any migrants or refugees, if he does choose to follow through on that. Alex Rossi there in Lesbos, thanks very much indeed. So what is the latest situation on the island of Lesbos? Let's take a look from the